Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summer channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. Before I start making this video, I checked the updates that I have received during the night because it's morning of the local time. But you know what, that I wanted to create a balanced video with the Ukrainian and the Russian videos, but when I start checking the updates, I saw that there are almost no Russian updates, or there are a lot of updates but without any video or photo confirmation. So today there are going to be a lot of Ukrainian videos and a lot of information about the Ukrainian forces and the Ukrainians, and believe me, they are very interesting. First, let's start with Germany. Today, this night, the Ukrainian sources published the video how the Ukrainian reporter was making some kind of material video from Germany, and he was saying that Ukrainians have already started training to use M1A1 Abrams. As you can see on the background, there is a tank Abrams with demining equipment. So basically this is a real fact, real video confirmation that Ukrainians have already started training process, and probably in 2 or 3 months we're going to see the Abrams on the battlefield, somewhere maybe on the Bradley Square. We got just there is like very interesting updates about Wagner's that we received from the territory of Belarus. Today the local authorities published a video how the Wagner started training process on the territory of Belarus. It was something like a day of open doors when everybody from Belarus and everybody from Russia and everybody from this territory could be able to enter this camp to talk with Wagner's, to pass some trainings, to see what's going on and so on. So basically this is another media campaign from Russian and Belarusian authorities trying to show that Wagners have been redeployed to the territory of Belarus and that these guys have already started training process with some Belarusian locals. And about the last global update, I believe we are going to finish with Zaluzhny, the head of Ukrainian army commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Washington Post published a very interesting article. Zaluzhny was interviewed, and he was asked a lot of questions about Crimea, about the next plans, about the next stages of this special military operation. And to tell the truth, Zaluzhny very surprised me because, first of all, he told us that he's not going to listen to anybody. I believe that this is some kind of reaction of Zaluzhny and Zelensky, probably because I don't think that he can make such things without approval of the president of Ukraine regarding the situation in the Baltic states about the NATO summit. You know that Ukrainians have, according to the things that we could see, about the real things that we could see, the Ukrainians haven't achieved and haven't got anything as a result of the NATO summit. And the Zaluzhny reported that he's not going to afraid and he's not going to listen to anybody. And if he needs to attack the territory of Russian Federation, if he needs to kill Russians, he will do this no matter what other people say. So as you can see, the commander-in-chief is ready to continue. He wants to continue, and as I understand, he is not going to stop, and he will continue the special military operation even if the Western countries will start supplying and supporting Ukraine with ammo. Very interesting situation. Now we're moving to the ground, and we're going to start with Orikhiv bridgehead. First of all, with the Piatykhatky area. The Ukrainians and the Russians published some videos from this bridgehead. The Russians published very interesting video of one of the episodes of the battle for Piatykhatky. As you can see on this video, we see how the Ukrainians were passing by and walking along the streets in that small settlement. The Russians established 100% control over the settlement and bombing and shelling the settlement every single day, every single second, I believe so. So there are no safe place for the Ukrainians. And the Russians just forced the Ukrainians to step back from the settlement, and they just try to create and make this settlement as a part of the gray zone. Of course, it's very good for them, for the Russians, to reduce the strongholds and the possibilities of the Ukrainians in this settlement. But from the other side, the Ukrainians publish their own videos of preparation for the next offensive operation, for the next stage of offensive operation. For example, this is 4 icons. As you can see, 4 icons is the place of 4 strikes with Ukrainian drones against the Russian armored vehicles that we might see on this video. For example, on this video we see that the Russians tried to hide their tank inside of the forest line. The Ukrainians managed to discover, and as a result of artillery strike under the drone coordination, that tank was destroyed. The next episode will start in a second. Another Russian track. The Russians hide the track inside of the forest line with infantry. Probably the infantry have been landed, but the Ukrainians managed to discover and to destroy the track. Russian tracks also somewhere in the south of Piatykhatky. Another area of Russian positions, the Ukrainians discovered and bombed the Russian trenches with Russian infantry inside of those trenches. So as you can see, the Ukrainians continue preparation of upcoming restarting of offensive operation in this area, and for these purposes they're trying to pin down and to reduce the Russian positions. But very interesting thing that, as you can see, the vector, the direction of Ukrainian activity is not in direction of Zhiribyanki, or at least in direction of Lugavoye. If you ask my opinion, if the Ukrainians were planning to attack in direction of Lugavoye, let's say in this direction, like the most obvious, the most important direction for the Ukrainians, I believe that we should see the same icon somewhere in the vicinity of Lugavoye, where the Ukrainians try to destroy and pin down the Russian reserves and reinforcements and so on. But basically, as you can see, we've seen all these icons a little bit in other direction, so it makes feeling that maybe the Ukrainians will change their direction and they will try to proceed and to continue offensive operation among the fields in the area between Grazova and Dolenka in this settlement. So maybe it's just like trying to understand the Ukrainian plans. Now we are moving to Orikhiv bridgehead, to Robotyne. The Russians managed to repel the Ukrainian attacks and the Ukrainians' waves of attacks during the previous days. Currently, both sides took a small operational pause and making some kind of regrouping. And the Ukrainians published very interesting video from the vicinity of the settlement Chertovo, this one. And the video is interesting because there is a video of Russian convoy. As you can see, there is a big Russian convoy, and it's a very big question for how long that convoy was staying between this forest line. The Ukrainians managed to discover the convoy. The Ukrainians managed to coordinate with drone the HIMARS, and the HIMARS were able to redeploy to the necessary position and to make a strike. A lot of Russians are very surprised with this situation, because it's already like a year and a half passed since the beginning of operation, and still the Russian forces use the tactics of movements of the convoys. And even if you're moving with the convoys, the Russians still use the tactics of some camps along the roads under control, that are under complete control of Ukrainian drones. Now we are moving to Urozhaine. There was a very fierce fighting yesterday in this area. The Russians managed to repel every single Ukrainian wave of attack. I'll remind you that Ukrainians were attacking in direction of Urozhaine. That attack was repelled. And that Ukrainians were attacking in direction of Staromayorsk. That attack also was repelled. And the Ukrainians were forced to step back for regrouping to the north towards Rovnopol, Makarovka, Blagodatne, and so on. And the Ukrainians start publishing more videos how they continue bombing and shelling the settlement Urozhaine with drones. And basically on this video we see as Russian positions in the northern edge of the settlement, anti-tank position that the Russian use for discovering and attacking Ukrainian tanks who is heading in the direction of that settlement. The Ukrainians managed to discover that position and destroy that position with drone. So for now, I believe no losses among the manpower. When talking about Donetsk, Klishchevka, Artyomovsk, we haven't received any updates from during the previous night. we saw like the results or the process of the clashes in the vicinity of Klishchevka, the fire on this forest and so on. For now, we still haven't received any numbers, any results of the tank battle between the Ukrainian and Russian position. I believe that today we're going to receive more updates, but for now we see that probably the Ukrainians haven't managed to establish control over the settlement during the night, and probably the Russians managed to repel every single Ukrainian attack. And some sources were saying that also the Russians launched their own counter-offensive somewhere in this area. And now we are moving to Donetsk area, to Liman to be more precise. The Russian sources claims that during the previous night, after a few days of offensive operation, the forces of Russian 76th Division, Airborne Division, this is the division, this one, 76th Airborne Division, Air Assault Division. After a few days of attack of that brigade, the Russians managed to capture more than 30 strongholds in direction of Seversky Donetsk and river, and in direction of Tarskoye settlement. 42nd mechanized Ukrainian 42nd mechanized brigade was completely defeated and destroyed, and the Ukrainians were forced to return back the forces of 95th Storm Brigade that, according to the Russian sources, was redeployed from Liman Frontline to Zaporozhye. This is 95th Air Assault Brigade. We haven't made any movements on the map with this brigade. This brigade was and is and will be on this bridgehead. And this is our 42nd Brigade. This brigade was recently redeployed to the forest. This brigade used to be located behind Zaluzhny, but before the Russian offensive operation, the Ukrainians have redeployed this newly created brigade right on the combat line. And based on that article, this brigade was completely destroyed during the previous days of clashes. And we will finish this video with Novoselivske. The Russians, there are two camps on Russian side who claims and says completely different opinions about the situation in Novoselivske. Some sources are saying, including the Russian military expert Rybar, reports that the Russians continue a clearing operation in Novoselivske, trying to develop the bridgehead in this settlement. But other group of Russian military experts reported that the Russians controlled just the railroad ways and maybe just a street of railroad ways, and the rest part of the settlement is in the gray zone, and the Russians don't have any, even just a small control, maybe visible control and so on. Neither the Ukrainians have any control over the settlement, but the situation in the settlement is not so good and perfect as we discussed in the previous days. The situation there is very complicated, and the most important, that Ukrainians managed to accumulate and redeploy and collect their 32nd forces of 32nd Mechanized Brigade, the reserves, and currently the Ukrainians are counter-attacking. The Russians used the flamethrower systems to stop and to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities, but for now the battle is continuing. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.